Hey there, welcome to the channel. If you're looking for the perfect way to unwind and drift off to sleep, you're in the right place. Tonight, we've got a whole hour of some of the most interesting and emotional Reddit stories from crazy family. Dramas to heartwarming moments to help you relax and escape the day. So get comfortable, let go of your worries, and let these stories carry you into a peaceful sleep. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoy this, and make sure to subscribe for more stories to relax to in the future. Now let's get started and dive into tonight's tales. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's fall asleep together. Enjoy. I've always been proud of my family's history. My grandparents built a tiny cabin on the shores of Lake Clearwater in the early 1970s, a simple retreat where they painted watercolors while my cousins and I chased frogs. When Grandma passed 5 years ago, and Grandpa followed shortly after, he left the cabin to me and my older brother Ethan, 32M, equally. He insisted that we honor the place, keep it in the family, and preserve it much as he and Grandma had kept it, a haven for artists, writers, and dreamers. Ethan and I spent summers restoring the place together. We replaced the rotting floorboards in the main room, painted the walls in soft pastels, built bookshelves for my childhood novels, and even installed big windows overlooking the lake. We drafted a plan, turned the cabin into an artist residency program. My background in graphic design would help with marketing. Ethan's architectural degree would keep renovations on track. We talked about opening applications so illustrators, potters, and poets could spend 2 weeks there each summer, sharing their art with the community and holding workshops. We were enthused and hopeful. Last year, Ethan announced he had met someone, Sarah, 29F, a social media consultant who lived in Chicago. She visited the cabin twice, loved its rustic charm, and suggested an idea that sounded sensible on the surface: rent the cabin on Airbnb when it wasn't hosting artists. The extra income, she said, could cover maintenance costs and eventually pay for solar panels and a small studio extension. She'd drafted spreadsheets projecting gross revenue of $15,000 a season, even after Airbnb fees. I was cautious. That number assumed near constant bookings, but I knew the cabin's remoteness meant it was off-grid in low season. My artistic vision felt threatened by the commercialization. I worried the cabin would lose its soul. I voiced concerns to Ethan in DSY, a long call one evening. I said I worried about wear and tear, the headaches of guest damage, the energy of constant strangers, and the risk that art retreats would take a back seat to short-term renters. Ethan said I was being idealistic, that we couldn't subsidize a cabin with our savings forever, and that we needed a revenue stream or it would decay. I suggested seeking a grant from the local arts council or hosting fundraising events in the nearby town. He countered that grants were uncertain and fundraisers cost money too. We decided to compromise last fall. We'd pilot Airbnb rentals for 2 weekends in May and 2 in September, times outside the peak artist residency, months of June through August, and then review. Sarah got the listing up in November, carefully curating photos of the sunlit loft and cozy hearth. My name appeared alongside Ethan's as co-host on the listing page. I didn't make a fuss then, hoping a small trial would ease my worries. The first weekend in May, 4 guests arrived and everything went smoothly. They left glowing reviews about the cabin's calm and the beautiful lake view. That success emboldened Sarah. She emailed Ethan and me. We can expand to June and September, add 2 more weekends in each. We'll net extra revenue to reinvest. In the studio, she claimed she'd handle guest communication, cleaning, key exchange, and insurance claims. Ethan enthusiastically approved. I hesitated, but didn't voice strong objections, trusting that 2 more weekends wouldn't ruin the place. Then, in late April, Ethan sent a message announcing a bigger change. Sarah had secured a partnership with a boutique travel agency to book the cabin for up to 12 weeks a year, including June, July, and August, and to promote it as a creative retreat where guests could sign up for half-day workshops with local artists. The travel agency promised $20,000 in deposit payments that Sarah would use to cover maintenance. In return, they'd take 30% of rental income. I learned about this from a forwarded text after the fact. Nobody bothered to consult me first. Felt betrayed. I'd been pushed aside in decision-making despite my equal ownership. I wrote back in capitals, "This is not what we agreed. You cannot promise the cabin to strangers for half the year. Grandpa left this to us for artists, not tourists." Ethan replied defensively, "We need resources, Jules. The cabin costs money to heat, plow, insure. You love it in theory, but refuse to help pay." He sent me a breakdown of expenses. $4,000 annual property tax, but $500 insurance, $2,000 utilities. He said that if I didn't want to rent, I could buy him out for half the value, but probably at least $50,000. I had $10,000 saved and no assets to borrow against. I offered once more to meet in person, to sit down with Sarah and Ethan at the cabin in early May and discuss a fair plan. I proposed that we stick to the summer artist program during peak months and limit Airbnb to off-season weekends. Maybe we could invite art students for portfolio reviews at reduced rates. I assured them I'd help with cleaning and management responsibilities. They agreed to meet, but only after Sarah had already dispatched contracts to the travel agency. On the day of the meeting, I arrived to find a ring of painter's tape around the original oak floors and sheets of plywood covering Grandma's painted murals. Sarah had hired contractors overnight to install a commercial-grade kitchenette, updated climate control, and Wi-Fi boosters. The cabin looked less like a retreat and more like an Instagram-friendly pop-up. I burst into tears. Ethan tried to calm me. "Relax, the upgrades are good. They make it comfortable." Sarah rolled her eyes. "We're professionalizing this. We can't have a leaky roof and no internet. People want comfort." I said, "Grandma painted those murals herself. They're part of the cabin's character." Sarah snapped back. "Nobody's staying to admire old paint anymore. They want hookups, coffee machines, and Pinterest backdrops." I snapped, "Then maybe you don't understand why Grandpa left this to us in the first place." The atmosphere turned icy. Sarah refused to remove the plywood. She said they'd already invested $8,000 in upgrades. When I pointed out that those changes violated the preservation clause in Grandpa's will, where he stressed that the cabin remain largely unchanged, they accused me of clutching at legal technicalities. Ethan suggested mediation, but Sarah said she had a lawyer drafting an amendment to the will that would give them sole operational control in exchange for covering all future expenses. That lawyer's name was never shared with me. I felt cornered. With our relationship strained, I consulted a probate attorney myself. He confirmed the preservation clause was enforceable, that major alterations required unanimous consent from both owners. He offered to write a cease and desist to Sarah and Ethan, which I agreed to. The letter demanded removal of all commercial renovations and suspension of the travel agency contract. Within 24 hours, Sarah fired back with her own lawyers. Letter threatening suit for breach of contract with the travel agency and defamation if I accused her of wrongdoing publicly. Ethan, caught between his wife's ambitions and his sister's legal action, stopped answering my calls. Sarah blocked my number entirely. I received a message from the travel agency. They were instructing me to relinquish hosting privileges or face litigation. I tried calling Ethan's voicemail, but he changed it. Our parents, my dad and stepmom, refused to get involved, saying it was a business dispute. Our cousins texted, begging me to reconcile, fearing the more this dragged, the less likely any of us would see Grandma's murals intact. I've been sleeping poorly, worrying that the cabin will become a sterile Airbnb, shorn of its history. The attorney told me the case could drag on months, possibly years, and that legal fees might exceed $10,000. Ethan drew up a 2-page document offering to buy me out at an amount I cannot pay. He gave me a deadline of 30 days to decide. If I refuse, he said he'll file for partition, forcing a sale of the entire property and splitting the proceeds. That sale would almost certainly lead to demolition, since developers eye the lakeside lot for modern condos. I don't know what to do. I love my brother, but I cannot stand idly by while the cabin is gutted and turned into another generic vacation rental. I feel like the bad guy for fighting so hard, for dragging lawyers and courts into a family legacy. But I also feel like Grandpa's spirit would haunt me if I let it go without a fight. So Reddit, Am I the a-hole for refusing to agree to Sarah's expansion, for calling lawyers to enforce the preservation clause, even though it pits me against my brother and could destroy our relationship? Eta for putting a will above my own family's peace? Hello Reddit, I31F. Am feeling overwhelmed and torn about a situation that spiraled out of control. And I need your judgment. Am I the a-hole? Background. I come from a modest family. My parents divorced when I was young, so I split holidays. Between my mom, 60F, and dad, 62 Lemmy. I have an older half-brother, Rick, 35M, from my dad's second marriage, and a younger sister, Zoe, 28F, from my mom's second marriage. My parents each remarried, giving me two step-parents, my stepmom, Lisa, 55F, and my stepdad, Mark, 58M. Over the years, we've had ups and downs, but generally celebrations and major events were family affairs. 2 years ago, my stepmom, Lisa, inherited a beach cottage in Cape Shores from her late aunt. It's a modest 3-bedroom house on a narrow inlet, booked months in advance during summer. Knowing I'd always loved that spot, Lisa invited me to use it any time it's not booked. She said she'd coordinate with her aunt's estate trustee to ease booking conflicts. I was thrilled. Cape Shores had been my happy place growing up. The dispute begins. Last summer, Lisa told me she was renovating the cottage, adding a mudroom, new siding, and replacing windows for better insulation. She said it'd be done by June. In March, I made plans to bring my partner, Sam, 32M, and our 2 friends, Claire, 30F, and Jordan, 29M, for the first week of July. Lisa assured me in early May that the renovations would finish by mid-June, and the cottage would be ready. In early June, Lisa texted, "Renovations delayed until July 10th. Can you shift your stay?" I explained I'd booked our Chicago vacation flights months ago and couldn't change them cheaply. She apologized, but said contractors overran. I offered to pay extra for a cleaning crew or rent storage for the renovation supplies, but she refused, saying it wasn't my job to solve her logistics. With no viable alternatives that summer, hotels were fully booked. I cancelled my trip and forfeited $200 in non-refundable flights. I was disappointed, but accepted it. This season's plans, fast forward to this spring. Lisa invited me again, saying the cottage is fully operational from May through September, except 2 weekend blocks reserved for her friends and her own retreat. She detailed a calendar with open weeks, and I picked the 3rd week of August for Sam and me. Over the next month, we planned grocery lists, beach gear, dinner reservations. On July 15th, 2 weeks before our arrival, Lisa texted, "I've added 3 corporate retreats and a weekend family reunion block in August. Your week, AUG 1420, is now reserved for my work retreat. Can you pick another date?" I was livid. I replied, "That's the week I booked in May. You said it was free." She answered, "I didn't realize I'd scheduled the corporate events. They're crucial for my side job income." "Sorry," I explained I couldn't shift. My work schedule, non-refundable train tickets, $300, and Sam's conference dates. I offered to cover the cost of her retreat's alternate venue, but she insisted no. The cottage is mine now, and I decide. Escalation furious, I found an Airbnb down the street. It cost $2,500 for the week, over double our budget. I booked it reluctantly, informing Lisa. She replied coldly, "Great, glad you found a place." At this point, my friends and I were resentful. Organizing a separate place defeated the purpose. We were supposed to spend evenings sharing the cottage bonfires and high-tide walks. Instead, we ended up at an expensive rental with thin walls, sleeping on couches. 2 days into our stay, I got a call from Jordan. "Lisa's at the local bar bragging that she outmaneuvered you and that her corporate clients are paying big money to use your spot. She's basically rubbing it in." I was mortified. I texted Lisa, "Stop talking about my cancelled trip and focus on being a decent host." She didn't reply. What I did, fed up, I emailed the estate trustee, the lawyer overseeing Aunt Marlene's will, demanding they enforce Aunt's original instruction, that I receive 6 weeks per year of complimentary use, non-transferable, first come, first serve, and that bookings cannot override that right. The trustee responded that the terms were ambiguous and that they'd try to mediate but couldn't guarantee outcomes. Lisa found out and declared I'm dead to her. She revoked my access completely, changed the locks and told the trustee to block me. My mum intervened, telling me I was escalating and that the cottage was Lisa's gift, so I shouldn't leverage legal threats. My brother Rick texted, "You're being ridiculous. It's her cottage. She can rent it however she wants." Zoe supported me, but only privately. Lisa's now refusing to speak to me. I missed my chance to relax and reconnect with Sam, and I feel guilty for dragging the trustee into it. But I also feel entitled. I was promised access, planned around it and lost money and trust. Reddit AITA. For demanding enforcement of my usage rights even though it's a gift, for calling in a legal trustee over my stepmom's head, for expecting her to prioritize my modest vacation over her income-generating retreats. Hey Reddit, I28F, have found myself in an escalating family drama, and I need your honest judgments whether I'm the a-hole in this situation. A bit of background. I come from a family deeply rooted in tradition and ceremony. My grandparents, whom I'll call Nana and Papa, immigrated to this country in the 1960s, built a small textile business together, and raised 3 children. My mother, 56F, my uncle David, 54 ma'am, and my aunt Karen, 52F. I have 2 younger siblings, my brother Theo, 26M, and my sister Amara, 24F, and I'm the eldest at 28. Growing up, we were always tight-knit. Holidays were celebrated with elaborate home-cooked feasts, business successes were shared, and milestones honored with gifts. When Nana and Papa retired 5 years ago, they passed their business to my mom, my uncle, and my aunt, each taking equal stakes while leaving ownership of their sprawling family home, a 3-story house with 6 bedrooms, formal dining, guest, wing, courtyard, and gardens, to be shared among all descendants. In their wills, Nana and Papa stipulated that the house remains undivided, none of the rooms can be sold or remodeled into condos, and every descendant has equal usage rights, and equal share in any profits if the property is ever monetized, for e.g. as an event venue. They also set aside a trust fund for home upkeep and property taxes, to be managed by 3 trustees, my mum, Uncle David, and Aunt Karen, with guidance to preserve the house exactly as it was at their passing. After the funeral, the trustees met and decided to hire a professional property manager to handle bookings for family events, weddings, quinceañeras, anniversaries, to generate revenue to maintain the house. Meanwhile, my mum, Uncle David, and Aunt Karen had regular trustee meetings to approve expenses from the trust, gardening staff, utilities, minor repairs, and annual property taxes. For the first 2 years, everything ran smoothly. Our extended family booked cousin weddings, friend gatherings, and occasionally charitable events, and the trustee decisions were unanimous. My siblings and I visited frequently, staying in our assigned rooms, enjoying family dinners, and feeling the weight of history in every carved banister and stained glass window. Then last year, Aunt Karen announced that she wanted to transform the top floor's west bedroom, her childhood room, into a short-term Airbnb suite to maximize revenue. She argued that the demand for historical luxury rentals was high, and filling that empty room could generate an extra $30,000 a year for the upkeep trust. She assured the family she would handle the design, pay for tasteful restorations, and manage bookings. At the trustee meeting, she presented mock-ups, dripping chandeliers, tufted velvet headboards, and a minibar. My uncle and mother were intrigued, but I felt uneasy. The will explicitly forbade dividing the property into separate units, and the room had original hardwood floors and antique wallpaper that belonged to Nana. I voiced my concerns. That bedroom is part of the intact historic house. It can't become a separate rental unit. That violates Nana and Papa's wishes. Aunt Karen replied curtly, "No one cares if the wallpaper is original. No one lives here full-time. The trust is running low, and we need the money for roof, repairs and mold remediation in the basement." Our first trustee vote ended in a tie. Aunt Karen voted for conversion, my mum voted against, and Uncle David abstained, citing conflict of interest because his daughter's wedding planner clients might use the property. At that point, Karen declared the vote inconclusive and proceeded anyway. She signed a contract with a design firm, started ripping out the wallpaper and hardwood planks, and posted a listing on Airbnb under a pseudonym. The listing attracted high-profile bookings and generated thousands in deposits. When my mum discovered the contract signed by Aunt Karen alone, she confronted her, threatening legal action. Karen shrugged. "I'm the only one with the guts to make hard decisions. You and Uncle David are too sentimental." Soon after, I visited the house for my grandmother's birthday. I walked into that west bedroom and saw whitewashed walls, vinyl planks over the original floors, and a waiting list of guests poised to pay $350 a night. I felt sick. I insisted Karen restore the room on the spot, removing the drywall, relaying the original flooring, and tearing out the new ensuite kitchenette. She refused, claiming she had non-refundable deposits and contractors on schedule. I filed a formal complaint with the probate court, arguing she breached the terms of the trust by altering the property. Karen retaliated, sending a scathing group email to all descendants. She accused me of souring vendor relationships, wasting legal fees, and undermining our family's legacy and economic security. My email address was removed from the booking system, and Karen locked the door to that wing when I visited next, instructing the property manager to refuse me entry. My sister Amara and brother Theo sided with me, stating that our grandparents' wishes matter more than short-term profit. My mum was torn. She supported me privately but feared escalating the legal fight would bankrupt the trust. Uncle David remained silent publicly but opened the room for his clients' weekend stays, quietly funneling some of his commissions into the trust. Meanwhile, Aunt Karen secured more leases. She announced plans to gut the south guest wing next, arguing it'd fund a professional historic restoration of the garden facade, which she claimed the trust still couldn't afford. My heart sank, more breaches of the will. If this continued unchecked, the house's integrity would be lost entirely. 2 months ago, I petitioned the court to appoint a neutral trustee in place of Aunt Karen, someone outside the family with expertise in historic preservation, to oversee the trust. Karen responded by getting a restraining order, preventing me from stepping foot within 100 yards of the property, claiming I was harassing her and her design team. She also changed the locks on our family vault in the attic containing heirlooms, effectively cutting off all siblings, except Uncle David. My mum, crushed, told me to back off to preserve family peace. I refused, saying silence would seal the house's fate. Now Karen is accusing me of tearing the family apart and costing us tens of thousands in litigation. The trust documents show that if the house suffers irreversible alterations, the trustees must reimburse repair costs from personal assets, meaning any court victory will cost each trustee personally. I'm now midway through a legal battle. My mum is caught in the middle. My uncle is outraged that I've dragged him into litigation, and my siblings worry this will bankrupt the estate. Karen has called me ruthless, money-hungry, and disrespectful. I believe I'm honoring our grandparents, preserving their legacy, and protecting the communal property. But the consequences are real. No one's visited the house in 6 months. The annual reunion is cancelled and family relationships are in tatters. So Reddit, AITA for taking legal action against my aunt to roll back her unauthorized Airbnb conversion and preserve the house as our grandparents wished, even though it's fracturing my family. AITA for putting their legacy above Aunt Karen's vision for revenue. Or should I drop this fight to save what's left of family peace? Hi everyone, I, 29F, am turning to Reddit, because I need to know if I messed up and am the a-hole. My sister Emma, 31F, and I have always had a close relationship growing up. We're just 2 years apart, so we shared bedrooms, cliques, friends, and secrets. Our dad passed away when we were kids, and our mom raised us on her own. Even after she remarried and had 2 more kids, our half-brothers ages 7 and 5, Emma and I remained tight. We joke that a decade from now we'll still be scheming together. Emma got engaged last year to her high school sweetheart, Mark, 32M, and I was honored when she asked me to be her maid of honor. Growing up, I'd always pictured planning weddings, picking dresses and giving that epic maid of honor speech. I was thrilled, but things started going south with the bachelorette party. Soon after the engagement announcement, Emma came bursting into my apartment, wedding planner binder in hand, excitement radiating. "Julia, I've booked the bachelorette weekend," she exclaimed. My pulse sped up. What did she plan? She continued, "We're going to Palm Springs for 3 nights, all-inclusive resort. It's going to be amazing. You, me, the bridesmaids, plus our friends from college. Everything is taken care of. Spa treatments, swanky dinners, pool cabanas, and even a helicopter tour of Joshua Tree. It's going to be a dream. I even got a group discount. It'll be like $200 each." I felt a knot. Now $200 would cover my rent this month. My boyfriend, Tom, 30M, who's been job hunting since his contract ended 2 months ago, was scraping by with part-time gigs. I could theoretically swing it, but it would mean borrowing from my savings and Tom's, which we're using for emergencies. When I gently asked if there were cheaper options or if he could chip in, Emma's face fell. "Julia, I know budgets are tight, but this is my wedding I've saved for years. You're my sister, you have to be here with me." I wanted to be there, of course, but I also needed to eat, pay rent, and keep Tom afloat. I tried to compromise. "Emma, I can help plan a local mini bachelorette with your college friends here. Dinner, drinks, spa day. It would be fun, and I wouldn't have to break the bank. Then I'd still come to Palm Springs to celebrate, and maybe I bring less money since I spent on the local event." Emma shook her head. "That defeats the purpose of a destination bachelorette. I want everyone together, and I don't want a separate event. Please just be there for me." Great. Except I also felt guilty dragging Tom to a pricey weekend he couldn't afford. Plus, Emma's rules explicitly stated no partners, only the bridal party and guest list. I thought about talking to Mark. Maybe he could help. I confided in him over coffee one afternoon. He frowned. "I get why it's expensive, but if Julia can't afford it, maybe she can take maternity leave or pay over time. Or maybe she can stay in a cheaper Airbnb and just meet you for dinners." I nodded. Mark, sweet as always, said he'd speak to Emma about flexible payment plans, but afterwards I found out he never did. They argued when she found out. Emma accused him of undermining her vision. Now my sis was even more adamant. No changes. Month before the wedding, I realized I couldn't realistically scrape together the money without going into credit card debt, which would stress Tom severely. I decided to tell Emma the truth. I wouldn't be attending Palm Springs. I planned to host a fun weekend here in our hometown for her closest friends who couldn't make the trip as my gift to her. When I told Emma, she froze, blinked, and then burst out, "You're backing out? After everything I've done, I'm so disappointed in you. You're supposed to be my maid of honor." Her tone was icy, her eyes flashing hurt. I tried to explain again. "Emma, I love you and I want to celebrate. But I can't justify $200 plus airfare for just 3 days. I'm promising you a local party that will be epic. I'll cover the decorations, catering, and limo. Hell, I'll even hire that karaoke band you love. Let's do it." But she cut me off. "No, Julia. It's not the same. You're ditching me." She hung up. I sat on my couch, phone in hand, tears in my eyes, convinced I'd done the wrong thing. Wedding weekend arrives. Emma's IG is flooded with pink cabanas, spa selfies, and bubbly toasts. I'm back home with Tom, chilling in sweatpants. I texted her, "Have fun, I'm here for your local party next week." No response. Next day she posted a story highlighting every bridesmaid but me. My picture was nowhere. Our mom texted, "Are you okay? I know things are tough." Emma seemed hurt. "She keeps asking me if you're attending, why won't you come?" I replied, "Mom, I told her I can't afford it. I tried everything." Mom responded, "I understand budget, but it's family." She's upset. I'm so torn. I felt worse. A few days later, I hosted the local bachelorette. 3 of Emma's college friends flew in. We had a blast. Dinner, dancing, cocktails, karaoke, spa day. I covered everything, but every photo I sent to Emma got no reaction. I messaged, "Look how much fun everyone's having. Wish you were here." No reply. Wedding day, I flew down last minute, on credit card debt, sneaking in just before the ceremony. I walked down the aisle as maid of honor, heart pounding. Emma's expression was neutral. She nodded curtly. During the ceremony, she smiled politely at me, but I could see tension. At the reception, she avoided me. I gave my speech. It was, Heartfelt, stories of childhood antics. Tears when she got engaged, hopes for their future. The crowd was moved, but Emma's smile faded as I spoke. I looked at her, expecting tears or laughter. Nothing. After the reception, she cornered me in the restroom. "What was that?" she demanded. "Your speech was, you know what it was. Full of digs about our childhood. You made jokes about Mom and Stepdad paying for the trip, about Tom freeloading." I interrupted. "I thought you wanted honest stories." "You told me to make it unforgettable," she spat. "Not at my expense, Julia. You cost me money by backing out of the Bachelorette. You made me look bad in front of my friends, and you dragged your boyfriend into this drama. You're selfish." I sobbed. I was trying to help, but she cut me off. "No more speeches, no more emergencies. Just stay away from Mark and me for a while." Now I'm home again, emotionally wrecked. My mom says I didn't deserve her reaction. Tom says I did what I could. My friends say Emma is overreacting. Emma refused to speak to me for the rest of the evening, and she left me in the dust when I offered to help clean up. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for skipping the destination bachelorette and trying to host a local one? Or did I blow my sister's dream wedding? Am I the a-hole for not going all in on her big weekend when it would have financially crushed me and my boyfriend? Am I the a-hole? I've always been close to my dad's side of the family. My older sister Marie, 35F, our cousin Darren, 33M, and me, 32F, were practically inseparable growing up. When our dad remarried 5 years ago to my stepmom, Nina, 30F, we all welcomed her warmly, even though she'd never been married before and was younger than Marie. Our blended family seemed happy. My dad and Nina doted on each other, and they both made an effort to include us in their life. Dinners, vacations, holidays. Last year, our dad was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. We rallied around him and Nina, helping with meals, hospital runs, and trying to stay positive. When 6 months later he passed away, it was devastating. Nina was, of course, heartbroken, but she reached out to Marie, Darren, and me to say she wanted us all to stay close, to remain family. A month after the funeral, Nina told us she'd be executing Dad's will next week. She invited Marie, Darren, and me to her house for brunch, said she wanted to discuss his wishes and make sure everything went smoothly. We agreed. On the Monday before Thanksgiving, we arrived at Nina's house, Dad's old home, the one he'd bought 20 years ago. The energy was heavy, but hopeful. We sat around the dining room table, steaming cups of coffee in front of us. Nina looked nervous. She cleared her throat. "Thanks for coming," she began. "Dad wanted me to tell you all about his will. He asked me to handle everything exactly as he wanted." She paused, took a deep breath, and slid a thick envelope toward Marie. "He left me the house plus his retirement portfolio. He wanted you three to have the farm." We stared at her. She continued, voice wavering. "He'd bought that small farm outside town when you were kids, the one we used for family reunions. He loved that place, and he wanted to keep it in the family. The will states that Marie, Darren, and Julia split ownership equally. Nina, that is me, retains the house and assets Dad and I accumulated together." Marie squeezed my hand. "That sounds fair," she said. Darren nodded. I opened the envelope and read the will's language. "My farm estate, inclusive of land parcel 4528 and all outbuildings, livestock, and equipment, shall be divided into 3 equal shares between my daughters, Marie and Julia, and my son, Darren. My wife, Nina, shall have full possession of our marital home and the financial assets accumulated during our marriage. I love you all." It seemed straightforward. We looked at Nina, smiling tentatively, and she gave a small, relieved nod. But then Marie's face clouded over. "Wait," she said. "What about expenses like taxes, upkeep? Are we each responsible for 1/3 of that?" Nina nodded. "Yes. The farm will be a joint venture between you three. Costs, upkeep, anything." "To do with the farm belongs to you," Darren frowned. "And what if one of us can't afford to pay? The farm's not exactly cheap to maintain. There's equipment, insurance, property taxes." "I'm sure you can figure it out," Nina said. "Dad wanted you to have a place to come together, something to manage as a family. He believed all 3 of you would honor that." I swallowed. I'd always dreamed of running that farm one day. Maybe starting a small horse breeding operation, training trail horses, even opening the barn to summer camps for kids. I knew it would be work, but I was passionate about it. Marie, an accountant, could handle bookkeeping. Darren, a mechanic, could maintain equipment. It sounded perfect, except that none of us had the capital to cover hefty annual costs, right? Now, over the next 2 weeks, Marie, Darren, and I met to talk strategy. We calculated that to cover the first year's taxes, insurance, and maintenance, we'd need around $12,000 total, $4,000 each. None of us had that sitting around. Marie offered a loan from her savings, but only if we repaid her within 2 years. Darren said he could float his share, but he needed a small cushion in case his car repair business slowed down. I was between jobs and planning to start freelancing, so I could maybe scrape together $2,000, but not $4,000. We reconvened with Nina. Marie proposed that she and I take a small loan from Nina's inheritance share to cover the initial costs, and we pay her back over time. Dad would have wanted you to have the farm, Marie said, hoping to alleviate Nina's anxiety. Nina's expression hardened. I can't loan you money, she said. That would reduce what Dad left me. I need those assets. I couldn't afford to lend anyone $4,000. I plan to use most of his money to refinance the house, maybe take that ballroom I always wanted, you know? I had plans. Darren blinked. But Dad's will was clear, the farm's ours. Are you saying we can't maintain it because you won't help? She looked at him, eyes glistening. I'm not obligated to fund your hobbies. I felt my face flush. Dad didn't say it was a hobby. He wanted it kept in the family. She stood up. I get that. But I'm also a widow now, and I need security. The farm and its costs are yours. Expect to handle it yourselves. We left feeling stunned. Over the next few days, Marie and I exchanged frantic texts. Darren was angry. He felt Nina had tricked us, planted that farm clause expecting we'd collapse under costs. He started looking online for a lawyer to contest the will. I, on the other hand, felt torn. I didn't want legal fees or a nasty court fight that would drain the estate. I liked Nina, despite everything, and I knew this was hard for her, too. A week later, Marie, Darren, and I were back at Nina's for another sit-down. We'd spoken to Dad's lawyer, who confirmed that while Dad's instructions were explicit, we could agree among ourselves to sell the farm and split proceeds if we couldn't maintain it. But none of us wanted to sell. Dad had kept the horse, barn running ever since Mom died, and we all had childhood memories there. Milestone birthdays, summer campouts under the stars, late-night bonfires. We told Nina this. Darren said, we'd rather sell one chunk, maybe the pasture we don't use, to cover the initial expenses. But we don't want to let go of the barn or main fields. Nina looked suddenly interested. What if you sold half the land? The part near the road, and you used the proceeds to fund the upkeep? You could still keep the core property with the barn and trail woods. Marie brightened. That could work. We'd need to survey and parcel it, but... Nina nodded. I'll help with the legal costs. My lawyer's fees, you know. Consider it a gift from me to all of us to honor Dad's memory. Really? Darren asked, suspicious. Honestly, she said, I don't want to fight. You three deserve that place as much as I deserve the house. We all breathed. Over the next month, we worked with Nina's lawyer to parcel the property, sell off the roadside acreage, and cover the upkeep costs for the next 5 years. We set up a joint account and drafted an agreement. Any profit from farm operations, like renting stalls, boarding horses, event rentals, would go into that same account for maintenance, taxes, and eventual upgrades. Everything seemed to be moving toward a happy middle ground. Nina attended our first family workday at the farm, hauling hay bales with a grin. Marie set up accounting software on her laptop in the old tack room. Darren tuned up the tractor. I sketched out plans for a small training ring near the barn. We laughed, reminisced, and felt Dad's presence everywhere. Then, 10 days ago, Nina texted me saying she wouldn't be able to attend the next workday because she had a business trip planned for the week. I told Marie and Darren, and they shrugged it off. But yesterday, Marie and I drove out to the farm to mow sections of the field. As we arrived, we saw a big for sale sign by the road. and curious passers-by reading flyers about 45 acres available. I grabbed Marie's arm. "What?" Marie ran up to the sign and read, "Rare 45-acre parcel for sale, develop, subdivide, or farm. Contact XYZ Realty." She turned the flyer over. "Authorized by Nina Pearson, owner." I called Nina immediately. She answered, calm. "Hey, Jules, did you see? Why are you selling more land?" "We agreed to sell just the roadside half to fund upkeep." "That was the plan," she said. "But after I spoke to my realtor, it made sense to sell the entire parcel. I didn't realize you cared so much. It's worth more, and it will cover costs for, 10, 20 years. You'll never have to pay another dime." Marie snapped, "You never asked us." "I thought you'd understand," Nina said. "Financially, it's the best choice. You get the barn, the private acreage, you get security." "But that's not what Dad wanted," I yelled. "He wanted all of us to have the farm together. Land. Fields, barns. We agreed to parcel and sell half, but not the whole place. You're taking away the woods where we camped, the trails Dad built, the fields behind the barn." She sighed heavily. "The leftover land doesn't have any sentimental value for you. It's just woods. You'll still have the built-up areas. You think this is about memories, but it's about practicality." "It's not just woods," I said, voice cracking. "It's where Dad taught us to ride. It's where we said goodbye to him before he went in for surgery. It's where Marie and I held that camp for neighborhood kids last summer. It matters." Nina paused. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but Dad's will gave you the farm, and it gave me the assets to decide. This is my decision." I hung up. Marie and I sat there, stunned, tears in our eyes. On the drive home, we argued. She said we should just suck it up and accept what we can. "We fought for the chance to keep something," she said. "Let it go." But I can't stop thinking about those trails, those hidden glades in the woods where Dad mapped birding routes, the little pond by the old oak tree where we spilled cider on our shoes at the autumn picnic. I feel like Nina has gaslit us, saying she was on our side, then behind our backs selling the entire thing. Last night I called Darren. He was furious and wants to take legal action to reverse the sale. He thinks Nina breached some fiduciary duty. Marie is wary. She doesn't want lawyer fees and a family court battle. I'm stuck in the middle, hating that Nina, who I once thought of as a sister, could so casually erase our childhood. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for feeling betrayed? Am I unreasonable for wanting the woods and trails back, even if it means fighting my stepmom? Or should I just let go, move on, and be grateful for the barn and pasture that remain? Am I the a-hole? Growing up, our family Sunday dinners at Dad's Italian restaurant felt like a scene out of a movie. The kitchen buzzed with activity. My mother, Sophia, 60F, tossing homemade pasta. My father, Antonio, 62M, coaxing rich tomato sauce with a flourish of fresh basil, and my older brother Marco, 35M, checking inventory in the back room. I'm Lucia, 30F, their younger daughter, and since I was little, I dreamed of joining the restaurant's kitchen brigade. Instead, I pursued journalism in college, writing food columns and reviewing city eateries, but I always stayed involved, helping with social media, organizing seasonal menu launches, and even introducing a small catering wing. When Mom announced last year she was retiring, and Dad hinted he wanted to step back as well, Marco and I braced for a major shift. Mom proposed selling the restaurant to a local investor, citing the heavy toll of running the business for 3 decades, late nights, health scares, endless paperwork. Marco, who had managed operations and finance, agreed. He'd been silently burnt out. I, however, felt a pang of loss. This place wasn't just a restaurant, it was family history. I urged Mom to consider passing ownership to us instead of an outside buyer, but she waved me off, saying none of her children wanted to carry that weight. Marco nodded diplomatically. I suppressed my frustration, unwilling to admit I yearned for something my family seemed ready to surrender. The restaurant went up for sale in October. I buzzed with anxiety as prospective buyers toured the faded brick walls lit by vintage sconces. In January, the buyer emerged, a tech entrepreneur, Jennifer Cheng, 45F, founder of a wellness app, looking to convert the space into a modern juice bar and co-working cafe. Marco championed the deal, saying we'd get a handsome profit, Mum, could retire in comfort, and we would still visit the restaurant's new incarnation. I felt blindsided. Marco hadn't consulted me before sealing the contract. After the sale, Mum and Dad threw themselves into planning an elaborate retirement party, 30 years of service, community testimonials, speeches from local dignitaries. Marco assumed we'd co-host, but I kept my distance, nursing resentment. On the night of the party, as friends and family gathered under string lights in the now-empty dining room, I gave a heartfelt toast about tradition, artfully weaving nostalgia and hope for the restaurant's future. Guests applauded and tears glistened on Mum's cheeks. Marco looked uncomfortable, but I thought I'd done right by our heritage. 2 weeks later, Jennifer reopened the space. The new juice bar had chrome countertops, minimalist stools, and a menu of kale smoothies and avocado toasts, the Italian, so replaced by West Coast vibes. I visited once, hoping to feel some connection, maybe a nod to the restaurant's past in the decor. Instead, I found a photo corner with neon signage, and the menu screen scrolled inspirational quotes. My heart ached. I posted a wistful Instagram tribute, even tagging Jennifer's business account, with a caption about memory and change. She responded only with a polite emoji. The fallout came 2 days later when Marco called me. "Why did you post that? On Instagram? It's bad publicity. Jennifer's investors are complaining." I tried to explain I was honoring our family's legacy, not attacking her business. He snapped, "You're sabotaging the deal. She offered you a job in PR, social media coordinator, just to keep you quiet. You should have taken it." I was shocked. I hadn't even known about the offer. Jennifer had quietly floated the position through Marco, hoping I'd come around. But I refused, feeling manipulated. I said no because I didn't trust her motives. I didn't want to craft marketing copy for a place that had replaced our heritage. Marco's tone darkened. "You're being childish. You think writing about restaurants is better than running one. Mum wanted this done her way. You're disrespecting her wishes." I accused him of greed. He'd always loved the idea of easy money and never fought for the kitchen flame. He accused me of being sentimental and living in the past. The argument ended with Marco threatening to cut me out of the family will if I didn't apologize. A week later, Mum asked us both to dinner at our childhood home. She looked tired, hurt that her daughters were at odds. Marco avoided eye contact. I sat stiffly. Over lasagna, she asked me gently, "Lucy, do you regret not taking Jennifer's offer? She wants you to build a digital archive of our recipes, maybe lead brand outreach." I felt tears prick. I said, "Mom, I love the family's cooking, but I can't work for someone who erased our home. I need to stay independent." Dad cleared his throat. "She didn't erase us, she's just moving forward." I realized he meant peace, not profit. I left dinner in a fury, deciding to write an expose in my food column about the rise and fall of beloved eateries using our restaurant's story as a cautionary tale. I drafted over 3,000 words, weaving personal anecdotes with industry analysis. When I sent it to my editor, he loved it and slated it for next week's issue. That evening, Marco texted, furious, "Don't you dare publish. I'll sue for defamation about business negligence and dragging our parents publicly." I knew I was walking a legal tightrope. Expose could risk a lawsuit for mischaracterizing the sale. I called my editor and confessed my conflict. I was personally involved. He suggested rewriting in third person to anonymize details. But I balked. I wanted to tell our family's true story. My fiancé, Miguel, 31M, urged me to withdraw the piece to avoid hurting Mom and Dad. My friends said I was brave to speak. Truth to power. Others warned I was trashing my own family. On publication day, the article hit newsstands. Local forums buzzed. Some mourned the disappearance of the Italian classic. Others debated family business succession woes. Jennifer posted a statement about looking to the future and honoring the space's legacy, though her tone felt forced. Marco confronted me. "You humiliated me and Mom in public. You crossed a line." I retorted that hiding behind silence served no one. He yelled that I'd fractured the family beyond repair. Now Mom has started avoiding phone calls from me. Dad is distant. Marco refuses to answer messages. I feel guilty. I wanted to preserve our story, but instead I might have destroyed the bonds I cherished. Miguel says I should reach out with a heartfelt apology, but I'm torn. Do I swallow my convictions to restore peace, or stand by what I wrote? So Reddit AETA for exposing my own family's business sale in a public article, risking legal action and family estrangement, all because I couldn't stand by as our restaurant legacy was rewritten by someone else. I never imagined that something as seemingly trivial as a family camping trip could unravel everything I thought I knew about my relatives. But here I am, questioning whether I'm completely out of line or if they've lost sight of what family is supposed to be. My name is Avery, 27F, and I come from a family of 5, my older sister Rachel, 30F, my older brother Dylan, 29 Mem, my twin brother Max, 27 Mems, and me. Our parents, Carol, 57F, and Simon, 60 Mem, instilled in us a deep love of the outdoors. They frequently took us on camping excursions in the Rocky Mountains when we were kids. As we got older, our busy lives and careers pulled us in different directions, but there remained an unspoken tradition. Every summer, we'd reunite for a long weekend at our family's campsite by Lake Pine Hollow, a plot of land our grandparents purchased in the 1980s. It was a place of memories, the rope swing over the creek, the pine-scented forest, the fire ring where we roasted marshmallows. Last year, our parents announced they planned to sell the camp. They cited rising property taxes, dwindling trust in everyone's availability, and concerns about single-handedly handling maintenance as they aged. My siblings and I were devastated. We felt blindsided by the secrecy of the decision, the sale. Notice arrived in our email inboxes less than a week before it went live on the listing site. I pleaded for an explanation, but Carol said they were under pressure from their financial advisor to liquidate assets. Dylan reluctantly agreed, saying he understood the logistical burden, while Rachel and Max were too stunned to speak. I pored over the listing. A charming 4-acre wooded site, rustic cabin, boat dock and storage shed, all gone in a flash. I was the only one to object publicly. I started an online petition among extended family and old family friends to rally support, to buy the camp collectively. I reckoned that if each cousin, longtime neighbor and friend chipped in, we might salvage it. I even found a real estate agent specializing in land trusts who drafted a proposal for communal ownership pro bono. I forwarded the details to Dylan, Rachel and Max, urging them to discuss it with our parents. Dylan replied tersely that he had no interest in managing such an arrangement and that the burden didn't justify the nostalgia. Rachel said she appreciated the sentiment, but couldn't afford any shares beyond what she already had in her mortgage. Max ghosted me entirely. In April of this year, the camp sold. The buyer turned out to be a developer planning to subdivide the land for lakeside cottages. In a frantic call, Carol and Simon tried to console me, promising they'd negotiate access rights for family weekends, but legal counsel warned that once the property changed hands, any easements would severely impact resale value. They regretfully said they'd told me too late to prevent the sale, though they insisted they'd done their best. I felt betrayed, not only by the decision, but by the lack of candor. The memories of my childhood seemed to vanish with the cedar siding. Over the following weeks, I couldn't shake the loss. I bought an inexpensive tent and pitched a makeshift campsite in my parents' backyard, sitting by a portable fire pit and stringing fairy lights among the trees. I shared photos on social media, tagging my siblings, urging them to join me in keeping the tradition alive. Rachel commented, "This is sweet, but I have work." Dylan said, "Cute setup," while Max reacted with an emoji. Growing frustrated, I organized my own trip. I rented a cabin 3 hours from our childhood camp, invited my closest friends, and set up a weekend itinerary mirroring the old traditions: canoeing, forest hikes, campfire storytelling. I spared an invite for each sibling, hoping they'd reconsider. None of them responded except Dylan, who declined, citing budget issues. I went anyway and had a wonderful time with my friends, but I felt the absence of my family at every turn. In June, Carol flew out to help me celebrate my birthday. That evening, she told me she was hurt by my petition. It embarrassed them in front of neighbors and old friends, some of whom contacted the listing agent asking for delays. She said they almost lost the sale because of my meddling. I apologized for any unintended consequences, but stood by the effort. Our family history belonged to all of us, not just to my parents' bank account. She replied, her voice trembling, that fairness wouldn't pay the plumber's bill when the septic tank backed up or repair the roof after a storm. She wondered aloud if I thought nostalgia trumped practicality. That conversation left me unsettled. I didn't want to cause financial hardship for my parents, but I couldn't forgive their unilateral decision to sell. A few days later, I received a group text from Dylan and Max. They had decided, unbeknownst to me, to pool funds and buy me out of my share of our parents' house, offering a sum equivalent to what they said was my fair inheritance, so I could live independently and not rely on joint sibling decisions. They presented it as a generous path forward. The implication, which they didn't voice outright, was that I should stop interfering with family affairs if I wanted to remain part of the family home. I was stunned and hurt. Our parents had never put my siblings in charge of me, nor had they ever hinted that I needed to earn my place in the family circle. I refused the buyout offer, replying that my desire to preserve our camp and traditions came from love, not greed. I added that if they truly believed I couldn't be trusted with basic family decisions, maybe we needed to reevaluate our relationships entirely. At this point, things deteriorated. Dylan posted on Facebook a private message he received from me in which I'd vented about my frustration with their lack of empathy, adding that they didn't deserve to inherit. He framed it as me being toxic and entitled, and a few cousins and former neighbors chimed in with criticism, accusing me of sabotaging family bonds. In response, I posted a defense explaining my motives and arguing that preserving heritage is as much a responsibility as paying taxes. That led to heated debates in comment threads, and Carol publicly lamented on her own page that our siblings had become strangers rather than partners. With social media aflame, Carol and Simon invited Dylan and me to a mediation session with a family counselor. I agreed, hoping to salvage something. In therapy, I apologized for escalating matters publicly, acknowledging that I could have approached them more calmly. I told them I felt replaced, marginalized, and powerless, and that our childhood camp was a symbol of our unity. Dylan expressed that he felt attacked by my petitions and public posts, and that he needed autonomy over his own finances and life decisions. Max remained mostly silent until the counselor asked him what he wanted. He admitted feeling bullied by my guilt trips and wished I would stop making them feel like villains. After that session, we agreed on some ground rules: no public posts about family disputes, a commitment to privacy, and an understanding that future property decisions would involve transparent group discussions. However, the counselor also recommended individual therapy for me to address my anger and grief over the loss of the camp. I reluctantly accepted. Over the next month, I attended therapy sessions, and I came to see that while my feelings were valid, my tactics, online petitions, social media calls to arms, and public reprimands, had alienated the people I loved. I realized that my siblings did have practical concerns, and that my parents had struggled with real financial burdens. I recognized that grief over our shared heritage had morphed into entitlement, and that I'd allowed my sorrow to override empathy. Last week, I invited my family to our parents' backyard, where my makeshift campsite still stood, for a farewell bonfire honoring Lake Pine Hollow. I baked s'mores, dusted off old photo albums, and read aloud a letter I'd written to the camp, thanking it for the memories. Dylan and Max listened politely. Rachel, who had been distant, showed up briefly with her young son. Our parents sat quietly, tears in their eyes. We spoke without anger for the first time in months. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences, but it felt like a beginning. I offered to pay for a one-time family trip to any location they chose so we could create new shared memories. Dylan suggested a cabin in the mountains. Mom whispered that she'd love a beach house instead. We're still deciding. Now I'm left wondering if I was the asshole for rallying strangers to help save a plot of land, for publicly shaming my siblings, and for weaponizing social media to force a decision. Or was I simply fighting for something worth preserving? Ita for doing everything I could to keep our family's tradition alive, even though it nearly cost me my family's trust and love.